You're listening to Forward Faster, bite-sized insights for entrepreneurs.
Welcome to Forward Faster. My name is Andy Simon, and I am the Director of Operations for Luminate, which is the only accelerator in the world that's focused on optics, photonics, and imaging. And with me today is Joshna Seelam. She is the founder and CEO of Kilo Medical Solutions. They are part of our third cohort in Luminate, and they make products that deal with the neonatal space. So welcome, Joshna. Very happy to have you here today.
Hi.
So tell me about Kilo Medical Solutions. What do you guys do?
So Kilo Medical Solutions is an early stage medical device startup company, and we're primarily focusing on innovating products in the neonatal space, particularly for premature infants, kids, children. But our first product is primarily designed for premature infants to improve the conditions in the neonatal ICU space.
Okay. So by improving the conditions, what does this, I know what the product does because obviously we've worked together for quite a while, but if you can explain to the people listening and viewing, what exactly is the product? What's the name?
Right.
And what does it do?
Right. So the product name is Brise-Solette. It's designed in a very specific way to address the environmental issues that are currently there in the neonatal space. So there's a lot of research that's out there that shows that it's really important to have a supportive light and noise environment in the NICU for the development and the growth of the premature infants. So what nurses are currently doing is they're placing fabric blankets over incubators, which is where these infants are placed in. And they're covering them with these fabric blankets, or also known as a fancier way as incubator covers. And the reason why they're doing this is because they want them to not be exposed to bright lights like we are in right now.
Sure.
Because it really affects their sleep. Their eyes are not properly developed at this time. We are talking about premature infants, so they're very, very little. Their organs are not developed properly, so they're trying to put them in a very low stimuli, low light, low noise environment as much as possible. But although those are the recommendations, it's hard to implement those recommendations in day-to-day care. So the only way that they're implementing right now is either, some of the options are either adjusting the room environment, so like dimming the lights, keeping them as dark as possible, or covering the incubators with these Isolette covers.
Okay.
However, there's disadvantages to the solutions that are currently out there, so you can't exactly ask care providers to work in a dark environment. It affects with how they're providing care. In terms of the incubator covers, because they're made out of fabric blankets, they come with safety and sanitary concerns. When I visited over 25 different hospitals across the nation earlier this year, I've noticed that there's no standard as to how often these blankets are washed, the thickness of this blanket, which really affects how much light they're being exposed to at any given time. So considering all of these problems that are currently there with current solutions, we designed Brise-Solette to provide an ideal and optimal light and noise environment for premature infants. So we're using electrical films, and we're placing them on the outside of the incubator walls. And through those films, we're able to control what environment that they're in. And the main reason behind this is because we want to mimic the environment of a mother's womb. And we're able to achieve that through these electrical films. So
you have the electrical films on the outside or inside of the incubator covering. They remove the blankets that they're using. I'm thinking there's a blanket on top of it. I can't see through if I'm a nurse to the baby if there's distress or whatever the issue is. Does Brise-Solette remove that obstacle, or how does it work in that type of situation?
So it does remove that obstacle, and that's one of the primary reasons why we want to switch from using a fabric blanket to a technology solution. Because these are electrical films, we're able to control the opacity of the film at any given time. And we've designed it in a way that the film is getting information from the vitals monitor of the infant. So it's getting heart rate, blood pressure, respirations, temperature. So at any given point, if any of these important vitals are out of range, then the film will go immediately clear. So it's creating that visual for the care provider so that they can see the infant right away when there's something wrong with it.
So in your customer discovery, I know obviously you're with Luminate, and I think that you did either an SBIR or another program. NSF-I-Core, excuse me. So what did you find when you were speaking to not only nurses, and then specifically from a startup world, you need to speak to the actual purchaser, which may or may not be the nurse or the managing nurse. It could be a hospital administrator.
Right.
What have you gotten in terms of feedback from those conversations?
Yeah, so we've spent a lot of time doing customer discovery. That's one of the primary reasons we decided to get NSF-I-Core grant. So we spoke with pretty much everyone that's involved in the NICU space in the hospital setting. So definitely direct end users in terms of care providers. They're the ones that are actually using our product. Nurses, neonatologists. We spoke with infection control nurses. We spoke with nurse managers, nurse educators, to really understand what role are they playing when we're trying to introduce a new product into their space. We've also met with medical directors. We've met with purchase decision makers. We've learned that if you're trying to sell anything to the hospitals, there's all these different departments that you need to go through. So we were able to kind of lay out who's getting involved, value analysis chain committee, who's involved in that, which again is different from different types of hospitals. So at a private hospital, it's different process when you compare it to like an academia hospital. So we were able to really understand and learn the sales cycle and different people that are getting involved in the process.
Great. So a Brise-Solette goes on the incubator. The benefit is you're controlling the light, the circadian rhythm for the infant, and the goal is to actually then get them out of the NICU sooner. Or what is the end result? We'll look at it from two cases: from the personal, which is for the parents and the baby, and then also from the business case from the hospital's perspective.
Right. So the end goal with our product is that we do want to send these infants home as quickly as possible. So when I say that we want them to grow healthier as quickly as possible, we're tackling a variety of different problems with our technology. So one, definitely removing the need for a fabric blanket. Two, we're also implementing this idea of cycle light, which there's a lot of research out there now, especially in the recent years. There's a lot of research published that shows that if you're placing these infants in a supportive light environment, then there's a lot of health benefits as a result of it, including the stress levels are decreased. There's a release of growth hormone if they're in the supportive light environment. They are able to sleep longer, and they're actually gaining weight faster. All of these lead to them discharging from the NICU earlier. So we looked at it from a different perspective in the sense, yes, there's a lot of cutting-edge technology in the NICU that's providing care that's used for doing procedures and surgeries, but there hasn't been a lot of innovation in terms of environment perspective. So we wanted to introduce a solution that seems so simple but hasn't been done yet. So our primary reason is what can we do that's quick and easy to implement, but will have a major impact on the infant's life. So if you think about it, we're trying to mimic the environment that they're exposed to when they're in the mother's womb. Mm-hmm. So by providing that environment, that in itself should help them grow as they're supposed to be growing. So definitely for the families and for the care providers too, they want these babies to go home as quickly as possible because they should be spending time at home, mm-hmm. which is where they belong. And definitely for the hospitals too, because no one wants to see these tiny infants away from their families. But at the same time, almost all NICUs are always working at maximum potential. So there's an advantage to sending these babies home sooner so that you can admit a newborn infant into the NICU.
That's great. So use this for newborns. Hopefully it takes off, it goes well. Are there any other applications for this type of technology outside of the NICU? Or is really this is its focus and you'll take this as far as it can go and as a founder maybe go to something else afterwards, but
right.
Curious.
So I've been hearing a lot of different applications for this very similar technology from all of my different healthcare friends and colleagues. So I've been hearing that the same technology can be applied for at home with infants, newborn infants. They don't necessarily have to be premature. I've also heard that it can be helpful for adult ICU patients who are having circadian rhythm sleep disorders, or they're having trouble sleeping for a variety of different reasons. So there's definitely applications within the medical field in terms of that. But I've also heard from research perspective that there's a lot of research where you need to really control how much light you need for a certain experiment in the medical field, or even if you think of it for plant research, lighting plays a huge role. So there's a lot of different applications, but we haven't exactly explored all of them yet. Definitely in the neonatal space is our first priority.
So it's funny, as you're sitting there telling me this is the first time I've thought of it, and we've known each other obviously for many months, is it's almost the way they're doing things right now is similar to, I guess, when you have a parrot and you put the cover over the cage so the parrot now knows it's night or time to be quiet. So you're actually but you are creating a technology that can supersede all of this.
Right.
So that's really interesting. So what else is interesting is this, how did this all start? Because you have a little bit different background because this started out at a university as a university project, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Can you share more about that?
Yeah. So this actually started as a one-year class project for senior design capstone class when I was studying biomedical engineering at Virginia Commonwealth University. So initially, it was a class project that you do for a year, and then I think maybe 6 months in, when we were really doing initial customer discovery, just trying to understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve. That's when I got extremely interested in, okay, the more you find out about it, the more you realize that, wow, this is a big problem that needs a solution. And when we spent a lot of time understanding what are the current solutions, what are they trying to do right now, what are the problems with it, we're hearing all these different stories like the blankets really don't work. We've heard a story about the blanket getting caught on fire because it's around these other technology equipment. I've heard about, no one's going to admit, right? But we've heard stories in terms of how they're actually getting washed, how often, and all of those, definitely those practices are getting better over time, but there's still no standard solution. Everyone's trying to do something better, but no one really knows how much light is being the infant's being exposed to, because no one's collecting that sort of data.
Well, that's great. That gives you a big opportunity to help the babies and also to further your startup. So getting to the startup part, how did you actually come to find Luminate?
So we actually found, it's a bit of a funny story.
We're ready.
Found Luminate so we did this, we applied for this competition called Sbie. This was very early. Actually, it seems like a long time ago, but like just a year ago. We were trying to bootstrap at that time. So we were applying for competitions that are within our field, either healthcare or optics or photonics. And we applied for it, and we were invited to present as one of the semifinalists. And so Sujatha was a judge at that time.
Sujatha is our managing director, for those who don't know.
And so the competition was over. We came back to Virginia, and I think a couple months later, we got an email from you, or I think we got a phone call from you, something.
Sounds about right.
Something from Andy. And I think that's when we found out about, hey, there's this program called Luminate. It's very specialized. It's a very targeted industry. And it's got a lot of support in terms of technology that they can offer. So we looked into it, we applied, and we're here now.
There you go.
That's how we found out. It was maybe networking, maybe by chance.
Well, the Sbie, it's a huge conference,
Right.
That's out in the West Coast. That is a worldwide conference that people go to. So it's a great place to get exposed to different people. So
Right.
it actually goes to prove to the point, being out there, networking and doing those things
It's extremely important.
You make your own luck, so to speak. You
Yeah.
gotta be available.
And I can definitely agree to that, because it's not just Luminate. So by exposure, we actually got a healthcare partner as a result of it. So
oh, wow.
they've heard our presentation at one of the conferences, and a couple months after, they've reached out to us on LinkedIn saying, hey, we want to learn more about this technology. And a couple months later, they became our healthcare partner, who we would be piloting our studies very soon.
So that's somebody you got even prior to Luminate.
Mm-hmm.
Being Luminate, I know your mentors and different advisors that you have. I don't want to say what doors are open, but like what has changed, or what type of introductions or advice have you gotten, I guess, that has been beneficial, that's really hopefully accelerated your company from the time you started here?
Yeah. I would say a lot.
Okay, we'll go with that.
But I mean, in every different aspect that I can think of, Luminate has helped us in one way or the other. When we came in, we were still operating as a student team, so to speak. But it was really Luminate that educated us, hey, for a startup to be functioning as a startup, these are all the things that you need to have in place. Business model, how do you validate your business model? How do you put a financial model together? How do you put an investment portfolio together? I've heard the terms due diligence for the first time when Sujatha was teaching us. So I've heard a lot of things for the first time, for that matter. So I think for me personally, it's learning the process and putting that process into place for our startup. That was extremely beneficial, because we didn't really know what to be doing prior to Luminate. We were doing a lot of things because that's what you do as entrepreneurs. Like, you're trying to do one thing or the other at all times. But I think Luminate really helped us put a structure to our business.
So to tie into that response, you mentioned, you're coming from students, or you're coming from being students. What type of advice would you give to any student that's out there that's looking to commercialize either a project that they're doing right now, or other technology that's, doing a technology transfer from a university? Yeah.
So I would say, if you were in my position a year or 2 years ago, definitely, if you have done the work to do customer discovery, if you validated that there is a need for the technology that you're building or developing, then go forward with it, because you never really know. And you don't know all the answers until you go through the process, right? So even if there's some validation that there's a need for that technology, then I would say spend some time towards commercialization, see where it takes, but only if you validated the need for it. I think that's my biggest advice.
Unfortunately, it is a business. So
Right.
No matter how many people you're helping, it's got to somehow have a business case tied to it as well, too.
Right.
So let's go, fast forward, we'll go 10 years from now, or 5 years, whatever you want to do. How do you see the neonatal care space evolving or changing, or how do you visualize that?
I think from what I've learned through this journey, the neonatal care space has evolved so much with time and experience and a lot of research. So there's constantly new technologies that are being tested in this field, because you're talking about premature infants who are very little, and they need as much care as possible to improve their chances of survival. So what I see a lot of change in terms of innovative technologies that are going to be implemented in day-to-day practices. I think maybe not 5 years, but 10 years from now on, hopefully we will find new ways to send these infants home sooner, figure out maybe different ways of providing care at home as opposed to in the NICU setting. But then that takes a lot of time for that to transition to happen.
Well, hopefully Kilo Medical Solutions will be the facilitator of all of those changes.
Yes. Hopefully, yes.
And leading the pack, so to speak.
Yes. We do hope that we play a role in educating and implementing these different technologies so that these premature infants are home sooner, or implementing technologies that improve the long-term outcomes of premature infants.
Great. Well, on that note, I want to thank you for joining us today and also for being part of Luminate in our third cohort. And for anyone else who wants to follow Forward Faster, go to nextcorp.org/podcast, and that's nextcorps.org/podcast. Or you can go to Spotify or iTunes and search NextCorps Forward Faster. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.